Good afternoon, good morning, depending on what time you're watching this. Welcome to our friendly tech hour. I'm your son in tech, Mackenzie, here to help you. You know why we're here to make technology as simple, easy, digestible, and functional as possible. We've talked about a great deal of subjects, but you may have other questions, other concerns, things we still haven't addressed quite yet. Don't worry. You know I'm always here for you. We've got two things, the same two things we've always got. Number one, we've got our website, right? Go to getfriendly.help. There, we can set up one-on-one times for us to talk together, for us to get any of your questions answered, to address any of your frustrations. And we've got a really exciting new promotion. We're not quite ready to share it yet, though, but just wanted to give you that little teaser. Something really exciting as far as it goes with our one-on-one sessions. But check out our website, lots of resources there. Of course, we need your support. Please follow us on social media, Facebook, of course, subscribe here on YouTube. We'll also be on Instagram and TikTok as well, at least temporarily. We'll talk about TikTok on Thursday, because Thursday we will be talking about social media. Everyone's favorite topic. We'll be talking about what it's for and what to be careful of. And of course, we're going to make sure you're safe from scams. So, there are the resources we have for you. Today, we've got a very interesting topic. We're going to be talking about something that a lot of us ask because we have this experience. We get the sense that all these cameras, all these microphones on our device, are they spying on us? Are they watching me, trying to figure out what I'm doing? A lot of us wonder that. We're going to get into it today. I'm going to do my best to not take you down any rabbit holes of conspiracy theories. I'm going to try. But we're just going to talk about what's happening on the devices, the communication between your apps, where your information is captured, where it goes, what's safe, and of course, what's not so safe as well. In fact, we're going to kind of look at it a bit like a recipe. And we all know how to follow a recipe, right? You just need to know the ingredients and the steps. So we'll talk about the ingredients, we'll talk about the steps, and then we'll figure out exactly what's happening. And then you'll be able to answer for yourself if your devices are spying on you or not. So let's get back to the basics. You'll recall that we talked about at length at our first discussion, we talked about how your device, whether it is your phone, whether it is your television, your computer, any of these things, they are like a device that you drive on that super highway of information that we call the internet, right? They're all the exact same. They're like a vehicle, right? That's a critical foundational topic we've covered at length. But there's some components to these devices that we need to talk about, and there's two primary ones. Let's get into what they are. Number one, right? You've got your hardware, right? So your hardware is going to include things like you see there listed: the camera, the microphone, that light that's on the back, right? Like this thing right here, there's a light on the back of everyone's phone. I'm looking at a light right now so that you can see me well. Of course, you're able to hear me because your device has a speaker. All of those are hardware components. There's a lot of other things in your device. There's a GPS, there's a little card in there so they can connect to the internet. There's all sorts of different things in your devices. And that's important, right? It can't function without those. Otherwise, it's just a meaningless hunk of metal. So, all of your devices have hardware, but they also have software. And software is simple. It's just the programs and the apps that are on your devices, right? Nothing that complicated. We're familiar with apps, right? We talked about in our episode on websites the difference between websites and apps. Now, if you've been paying attention, you should be able to tell me the difference between a website and an app. If you can do that, put it in the chat. if you can do that without going back and watching the video. So if you're watching a recording, you're not able to do it. This is only for our live viewers. But if you remember the difference between a website and an app, throw it in the chat. I want to see how many people were paying attention. And if you do know it, we might have a little prize for you. So this is the two key components to all of your devices. The hardware, right? That microphone, that keyboard, the camera, the light, and then the software, the apps, the games, the social media programs, any of the programs, those are software. Now, for your device to work the way you want it to work, your software needs permission to use your hardware, right? It can't just force its way to work with it. It has to have permission. This is a really important thing for you to know, right? It's not magic. They have to have permission to work together. So let's just keep that in mind that the software cannot turn on your hardware without permission. Very, very, very key concept. I want you to just lock that in and bring it with us as we continue this conversation. So let's say you wanted to do a certain action. We'll take a look at some actions that you may want to do on your phone. In fact, I'm sure you're going to do at least one, if not all of these today on one of your devices. Let's take a look. For example, the action of making a phone call, right? That's the action you want to take on your device. So you've got your phone, you want to make a phone call. The software that you're going to use is your phone app, right? You're going to go to phone, right? Probably pull up a person's name and press call. So to execute that, your phone app needs permission to access your microphone. It needs permission to access the speaker on your device. And you notice there's a little list icon there. It needs to be able to get your contacts. Let's say you want to call your son or your daughter or your niece, your nephew, a good friend. It needs to find that list. It can't just on its own do that. It needs permission, right? Does that make sense? Here's another example. Let's say you want to post a picture on social media. It's Tuesday. Maybe you're going to do Taco Tuesday tonight. You're going to go to happy hour with your friends, get some tacos, maybe a margarita, or maybe a mocktail. I don't know. I'm not saying you're drinking, just saying you're going to have fun tonight. You want to share a picture on social media on your device. How are you going to do it? Well, you're going to go to your social media app on your device, right? That's your software, but you need the camera, right? It needs permission to access the hardware of your camera, right? You notice there's a little file cabinet there or a file box. It needs to go into your files to get that picture that's stored on your device. If you're going to take the picture in advance, it's stored there. If you're going to take the picture in real time, it's probably a little dim, right? It's getting darker. We're getting closer to winter time, so it's darker earlier. So now it's a little, you know, around dusk for happy hour. So you'll need the flashlight, right? And if you want to post the location, you notice you've got the little location icon as well. It needs those four permissions if you're going to post on social media. And then the same thing if you're going to navigate somewhere, right? You want to use your device to help you navigate from where you are, maybe at home, to get to where you're going to go for Taco Tuesday. Okay, well, you're going to need to go to your map app, Google Maps, Apple Maps, whatever the case, but your device needs permission. It'll need your location, right? It needs to know where you are so it can tell you how to get to where you're going. It also needs the speaker so it can tell you out loud what to do. And of course, if you're in the car, you may want to connect to Bluetooth so you don't have to put the phone to your ear or use speaker. You can just hear it in the speaker of the car. So far, is this clear that if you're going to take any action on your device to get to that hardware, your software needs permissions, right? It's just like when you would go as a kid, or maybe you've sent your kids on a field trip. They couldn't go without that permission slip, right? It's like that. It's like a permission slip for your software to access your hardware. So I think we've got that down. Now, here's the thing. When does that happen? When is the permission granted, right? Like, for example, your kids might come home or they might have come home years ago and say, Mom, Dad, there's a field trip tomorrow, right? Don't you love when they do that the day before? Hey, we're going on a field trip. Can you sign my permission slip? It's always before the action has taken place, the permission gets granted, right? So, for example, every time you download an app, it's going to ask you for a certain list of permissions. We'll take a look at detail on that shortly. But the main thing to understand is that you grant the permission. You need to, this is very important. You want to lock this in right now. You control the permissions on your devices. You decide what can and cannot be accessed, right? This is so, so important to keep this in mind. Keep this in mind. I'm so proud of chat, guys. They, I'm so impressed. They knew exactly the difference between a website and an app. Brilliant. We've got, you guys are paying attention. I'm super proud of you. Anyway, lock this in though. Keep this in mind that you have to give the apps permission to use your hardware, and you have the control over that. Please remember this. If if your camera is going to do anything, you have to grant it permission. If your microphone is going to capture any info, you have to grant it. That means you're always in control. This is extremely important to remember. Now, on occasion, you may face a situation where you feel a bit confused about why this app is asking for this permission, right? You may feel like, I don't know exactly why in the world this app would need this permission. Let me give you an example. How about Netflix? We'll just use that as a browsing app, right? Not that we don't have anything against Netflix. Please don't sue us. We don't have anything against you. We're just making a point. Netflix or Hulu or any of these streaming apps, right? For some reason, they always consistently 100% of the time ask for your location. They ask for your location. Now you might be thinking, excuse me, Netflix, what difference does it make where I am? Show me the movie. Show me my show. I don't want to share my location with you. But let's just think for a second. Why would Netflix need to know that? Why would they need to know where you are? Well, the reason is because they deliver the content that they deliver based on region. Let me give you a couple of examples. In Latin America, Netflix has a lot more telenovelas, right? These are Spanish soap operas that usually originate in Mexico, but they're made all over Latin America. Usually in Latin America, they're going to have more of those available. They're going to be among the things that pop up on the main screen, especially as compared to Europe. In Europe, they're far less likely to want to watch telenovelas, so they're not shown there. Another example, in India, Netflix is going to more likely share Bollywood feature films there than they would maybe in Africa, for example, where they may want Nollywood films. So it's a part of the service. It's part of the service for them to know where you are so that they can give you what you want to look at. See, it seemed right? If it seemed like maybe they were up to something, right? That's kind of the thing that triggers this idea in us that maybe they're up to something nefarious, something sneaky. But in reality, they're not. They're not up to anything sneaky. This is just so that they can do their job. And it's just like we talked about with the other apps, right? If you want to make a phone call, it needs the microphone. You can't make a phone call without it. So usually these permissions are totally within the boundaries of the service that they're delivering through the app. They just need certain access to your hardware, right? Nothing nefarious, nothing sketchy. The Big Brother's not watching in these instances, but and that's a big but there are times when the apps push it too far and you are left a bit confused. Let me give you an example of this. It makes sense why Netflix wants your location. Why does Solitaire want your location? That's weird, right? What difference does it make where I'm playing Solitaire? That seems weird. Is this is Solitaire spying on me? It may seem like it. It may seem that way. Let's just drill down a little bit into the activity before we jump to the conclusion that someone is spying on you. Let's just think it through a little bit. You see, app permissions are really just a single ingredient in a much larger recipe. And remember, I told you we were going to look at this like a recipe. And this recipe is for something that we all know and don't love. Unfortunately, we don't love it, but it's just a necessary part of living in late stage capitalism. A necessary part of life is advertising. And advertising online, one of the key components is for them to have certain permissions on your apps, right? That's ingredient number one on online advertising because their objective is to get the right ad to the right audience, right? Businesses are looking to deliver advertisements to the right audience, the right advertisement for the right audience. Now, we understand this. If you've been alive 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, or more years, you know this far better than anyone else. You've got a lot of experience dealing with advertisements that are targeted for a certain group, right? Let me give you a for instance. And I'm not saying this isn't, don't let this come across as judgmental. I don't mean anything judgmental by it. It's just a factual thing. I'm making a factual statement here, right? Back in the day, if soap operas were on TV, there's a big clue in the name soap opera. What ads, what commercials were they going to show, right? What were they going to show during the soap opera? You already know. Cleaning products. They're going to show cleaning products or food products for simple meals or perfumes or things like that, right? They're not there weren't pickup truck commercials during the soap operas. There wasn't, advertisements for menswear typically during the soap operas. Why not? Because they knew the people that were going to be watching television at that time and watching that particular content was most likely someone that was going to be concerned about taking care of the home. It's just that simple. They were trying to deliver the right ad to the right person. And so they understood this is the time to show that particular ad. It's just that simple. That is marketing 101. You don't want to waste your ad on someone that doesn't want to see it. So now here's the thing. App permissions function and they're just a part of that recipe, right? So in the television ads, they knew, okay, we're showing things in the middle of the day, right? We're showing dramatic stories. This is most likely going to be a middle-aged woman. Most likely, someone that takes care of the home, that doesn't have to work. So they're going to show them that content. So for online advertisers, right, for their objective, it's not happening that way. It's not time based. For example, going back to solitaire, I could be 36,000 feet in the air playing solitaire, and I could be anyone. I could be a little child. I could be someone middle aged. I could be a senior citizen. They have no idea who I am. So let's think about this. The apps that we download, how many of them do we pay for? Most apps that we use are totally free. And if the app is free, you know what it includes, right? I'm a person that loves music. I use multiple different music apps. I refuse to pay for music apps. I'm starting to soften because I use them a lot. And of course, I hear lots of ads, lots and lots and lots of ads, right? And those ads, of course, are just a part of how that app is provided for free because the advertisers hope that they can show me that ad and show me that ad and eventually I'll buy something, right? And so, how do they know what ads to show me? Well, they get some information from the permissions that I grant to that app. I let that software access certain parts of the hardware, and then from there, they can determine certain things about me. For example, where I am. They can know my geographic location, and so they'll give me the specific sorts of ads that would be relevant for a person living in that place. So that's where those app permissions come in. Now, is that spying? on you? Is that are they spying when they do that? Well, not really. Because remember, we got to lock in. This is important. You're in control of the app permissions. If you don't want to give them an app permission, then don't. You don't have to grant them access. It's just that simple. If you don't want them to know your location, they won't know it. Now, some parts of that app may not work. They may play that game back with you. You don't want to grant us permission? Fine. We won't give you access to this particular feature of the app, right? So there's a little give and take that has to take place between us and these app makers. But just remember, you're in control of what permissions you have. It should raise a red flag. It should raise a red flag if there's something weird about it, right? For example, if it asks to always have your microphone on, what app could possibly need your microphone to always be on? That's something to think about. And again, let's not go down any conspiracy theory rabbit holes, but if you own a smart device or if you use an AI assistant, if you just say out loud something that you want that assistant to hear, that means it's always listening. You have to think about that sort of thing because you granted it permission to always be listening to you. Yes, there's some convenience to that, but that convenience comes at the cost of a little bit of privacy. But at the end of the day, you are in control of what permissions your apps have. You are the one that gets to determine who has access, right, based on these apps. Super, super important to remember that. Now, something else that kind of triggers that are they spying on me feeling, right? Is this idea of spy technology, right? You probably remember the first time you saw in a movie someone had like this miniature tiny little thing and turns out it was a camera or a recording device and we and then there's like events that happen in the media that kind of like ooh like we realize like wait a minute there is some spying happening, right? For example, here's two examples. Watergate, right? Everyone remembers what happened at the Watergate Hotel with the wiretapping, right? Maybe we didn't even know that wiretapping was a real thing until then. And now we know the technology exists. If someone wants to spy, we now know it's possible. And that was going on 50 years ago now, maybe more. There was also in the more recent past Spygate. If you're a fan of American football, then you probably remember Spygate with a certain team. I'm not going to get into any names because I'm not trying to get sued. But one team was allegedly spying on another team's practice by using cameras high up in the stadium so that they could monitor what plays they were calling, what the cadence for those calls were. And then also there was this thing called Deflategate. They all kind of bit off of the Watergate Hotel. I don't think people I'm very skeptical if Gen Z or Gen Alpha even has a clue why they put gate at the ends of these things, but it's all based on Watergate. But anyway, the point of all this is we remember that we found out that there was technology out there that could be used to spy on us, right? And there's things that trigger. We've talked about a couple of them, right? When they ask for these certain permissions. And so when our devices ask for these permissions, we get kind of concerned, and then maybe we have this experience. Maybe you've had this experience. I'm not saying you have, but maybe now that I've said it, it might happen. Maybe you've had this experience. You've been thinking, man, I want to go on a trip. I would love to be at the beach right now. You know, it's we're getting right now. It's September, so maybe you're thinking, oh, we're getting close to the winter. If you live in the northern hemisphere, the cool weather is coming. I better get one more dose of nice weather. We should go to the beach. I want to go to the beach. And then next thing you know, you see it on your phone, an advertisement. Florida vacations, 65% off. Wait a minute. I was just thinking about how did they know? Are they spying on me? Is that what's happening? Well, we may feel that that's what's happening, right? But remember, the advertisers, they are trying to figure out what our purchasing activities are, because that in reality is one of the most valuable things in the world. What you prefer to purchase, that's one of the most valuable things in the world. If a person could guess what you were going to buy in advance, I mean, they'd be a trillionaire, but they can't. But sometimes when we have this experience, when we have that experience of, I was just talking about that. I literally was just talking about it, and boom, now here's an ad for it that fires off that thought. Are they using this technology to spy on me? Right? We feel that way. Well, we need to get back to our recipe, right? Because we've only talked about app permissions. That's one of three ingredients that's really important for you to know about. The second ingredient is related to actually a story that we all know well from our childhood. Maybe you even told your children this story, right? You remember Hansel and Gretel? They were in the woods, and what did they do to make sure that they could find their way back home? They left a trail of crumbs, right? They left a trail of crumbs, and then they could use those crumbs to find their way back home. They knew that it was only them that would do that, and so they really kind of made a good plan for children. I thought that was a good idea. You leave a trail so you can find your way back home. Well, something very similar happens when you're on the internet, right? When you visit a website, and you've probably seen this a million times, they'll ask you, would you accept a cookie? Right? Would you accept a cookie? A cookie is just a bit of data that a website will store on your computer so that they have evidence that you visited that website. That's all it is. It's just a tiny bit of data. It's just like that crumb, so that your computer knows and they know that you were on their website. That's it. And it can be really, really convenient, actually. A cookie can save you a lot of time on the internet. I'll give you an example. If you've ever had the experience where you're thinking of, oh, I want to go look at a certain website, and you just type one letter in, right? You just type one single letter of that website into the bar, and then this happens, right? You type B, and then it brings up all the websites you've been to that start with B. These are some of the ones we've looked at in our previous streams, right? All I did was press B, and it just automatically populated everything B. Now, does that seem like spying? That's actually very convenient, right? So if you tell the company, hey, yeah, you can give me a cookie, I'll allow you to put it on my browser. Um, then you're going to get this convenience as a result. At the same time, right? That's your choice. You get to choose, because they always ask you for permission. Can we do this? Because you'll see it as soon as the website pops up. Do you want to accept these cookies? Or you can say, yes, I'll accept some. No, I won't accept others, right? But again, you are in control of this. So just like with the app permissions, you're in control to a certain degree. That's the second ingredient in this online advertising recipe. App permissions, and then the cookies from the websites that you visit. But remember, there is a third ingredient. Very, very important third ingredient. And you may or may not, I suspect that you actually know this third person. I like to personify this third ingredient as a person because it sounds like a name. Do you know Eula? I'm sure you know Eula. You probably don't pay her any attention. You probably don't like her very much. But I'm very, very certain you know Eula. To my live viewers, if you know who Eula is, type it in the chat. I want to know if you know, because Eula is the third component, right? Third component of the online advertising recipe. If you don't know Eula, don't worry. Don't worry. I will reintroduce you to Eula. But trust me, you've never paid any attention to her. So, Eula, our dear friend, this is Eula, right? When you open up a new app and they say, "Hey, this is our licensing agreement." It's called a end user license agreement, or EULA for short. right? We see that EULA, and it's just a long list of jargon. You've seen it before, and you have to click I agree at the end, right? Sometimes they make you scroll all the way to the bottom and you say I agree, right? It's just too much legalese. No one wants to know to read all of that. It's probably just some nonsense, right? But we all know EULA and we don't pay her any mind. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. When you hit I agree on EULA, what you're actually telling the app maker is that they can take any information that they collect about you by means of your app permissions and they can give it to other companies. And other companies can take what information that they have about you that they've collected through cookies and share it with the app maker, right? So, are you seeing how this comes together as a recipe? Is it coming in clear, right? The game app, the game app that you're using, right? You're playing solitaire, you're playing Candy Crush, you're playing King's Castle or whatever game, right? It has permissions to know like your location. It knows different things about you, right? It'll just start with location. It knows your location. Now, the website you entered earlier in the day, it gave you a cookie and it now knows that you did a quick search for flights to Florida, right? That game app also asks for permissions to look at your texts. And as it goes through your texts, it saw that you sent your spouse, hey, I'm looking at some flights to Florida. Would that be in the budget? So then the next thing you know, you go to some other app later in the day, you forgot any of that happened. And what do you see? Cheap tickets to Florida, right? You see how that recipe comes together to give the ad that is for the right person at the right time? The app permissions, the cookies, and then lastly, the EULA, those things come together so that they are able to deliver the right advertisement to the right person. Now, most of the time, they're able to do that in the way that I just described. They're not listening to you in real time, right? They just take the information, they put it all together. It's just that simple. So it's in most cases they're not spying. Unfortunately, spoiler alert. Usually they're not spying unless you're saying something inflammatory on the internet and your profiles get flagged or something like that. Usually you're not, no one's spying on you. Advertisers love to try and figure out who you are and give you the ads so that you'll buy their stuff. But no, usually they're not spying. However, now you know the full recipe of what's happening and why these things happen. It's the app permissions, it's the cookies, and it's the EULA. It may seem like they're spying on you, but the recipe is actually you said that they could look at your information, and as a result, they're able to deliver you advertisements. And there's some egregious examples. There is a social media app. I won't say its name again because I don't want to get sued, and we live in a very litigation happy time, so I won't say the name. This app, however, it's not lie social media. Um, in their EULA, it says overtly, plain as day, not in legalese, in plain English, that they are going to take your information. They want all sorts of permissions: camera, microphone, files, text messages, phone calls, contact lists, email addresses, profiles on other apps, your social media on other apps, and they're going to take all that information. They're going to sell it to over 800 companies. And they say it in plain language, not legalese. 800 companies. So usually, friends, if you are using a free app, the reason that the app is free is because you are what someone else is paying for, right? That's usually what's happening. The advertisers want your information. They not your information. They want access to you. They want to put their ads in front of you. And so that's what's happening. Now, you may not like that, and I understand. I understand that you may not like your privacy being invaded by these devices. Guess what? Remember what we locked in. You're in control, right? And you don't have to be an expert, but you're no dummy. So, how do we manage this without going completely insane? Well, you see, the advertisers, their hope is that that simple recipe, right? They hope that that three ingredients just throws us for a loop, that we feel so overwhelmed with the complexity of how these things work together that we will just click yes. We always click allow, we always click agree, we don't even think about it so that we can use the apps that we want. So if we want to make sure these devices don't have permission to access us or our information, again, just like a recipe, if you are trying to make some sort of cookie and I just took the sugar out of your cabinet, guess what you can't make? There's no cookies being made without sugar, right? Try it with honey, see what you get. It's not the same. You need the sugar, right? So you just take the ingredients away. And remember, who's in control of the ingredients? You are. You have to click I agree. You have to click I accept a cookie. You have to say, yes, you have permission to access my microphone. So it's literally no more complex than that, right? You just decide what you want. Here's 5 things you can do. I'll list them out here. Um, we don't really need to read over them all for the sake of transparency, or if you're not actually looking at the screen, which I understand some of you just have this on while you're doing other things, and I totally understand. I'm going to read it for your benefit, right? The number one thing you can do is check your app permissions. Just that simple. If you're on an iPhone, just go to settings, then go to privacy and security, and then just check what apps have what permissions. And if it seems shady to you, just click. It'll, on an Apple, it should just be like that green. It should look green if it's on or white if it's off. Just turn it off. Just that simple. Same thing on Android. Go to settings and go to permission manager. You'll be able to see all your apps and what permissions they have. If it feels fishy, don't give it to them. Second thing you can do is, if it doesn't make sense for the app to have that kind of permission, just turn it off. Even if you wouldn't mind them having it in some situations, if they give a time duration that feels suspicious to you, just turn it off. For example, in the example we have Facebook. Do they need your mic 24/7? No, they don't. Turn that off. And that's not just Facebook specific, anybody. Nobody needs access to your microphone 24/7, right? How much more work is it to just press a button and then start to speak versus just starting to speak, right? So turn that 24/7 microphone off. The next thing that you can do, use the feature called Ask Every Time. So usually they're going to give you 3 choices when it's time to do app permissions. They're going to say use it only while using the app. They're going to say use it every single time, let it run whenever. And then they'll say ask me every time. So if you say ask me every time, that means before the app goes to do something, like let's say, for example, it wants to know your location, before it can access the GPS hardware in your phone, it has to ask you. And then you determine in real time if you want to grant access to your GPS to this app. Again, you're in control. Next, when you're on certain websites, right? Certain websites, of course, are going to offer you the cookie, right? Just like the witch and Hansel and Gretel. They're going to offer you, or rather, just like Hansel and Gretel, leaving the crumbs, right? The little trail of information. You can always say reject all or manage the settings, and you shut off the ones that are unnecessary. Some are necessary, right? We don't want people in the world just going to how to make bomb websites, and we're not able to figure out which people are doing that, right? So some websites have necessary tracking, fair. But if it's something that you feel is an overreach of your privacy, go to manage settings and just turn them off. Just that simple. And then lastly, keep perspective. Most of what they're tracking is for the purpose of advertising. Advertisers want our money. Yes, of course they do. We live in a capitalistic society. No matter where we live in the world, they're trying to convince us to give them some of our money, but you're safer than you think, right? It's way less dangerous than it seems. And this isn't, as I've said many times, I'm not here to fear monger. I don't want you to be afraid. It's the exact opposite. I want you to feel extremely confident and capable so that you understand exactly what is going on your devices, as opposed to feeling uncertain, feeling threatened, feeling stressed or anxious about it, right? I want you to feel confident and able to use these things. Okay, let's bring it home. Your device is not your enemy. It's just the thing you use to travel on that information superhighway, right? But that's a big but. It's smart to understand what the permissions mean, right? What information is being shared and how to take back control. Remember, you are in control. You determine what permissions apps have. You determine if you're accepting cookies, and you determine if you're going to agree to that EULA. You're not powerless. You are in charge. And if anything we've discussed, especially that last slide, I know, I know this is a lot. If you are at all stressed at the idea of doing this yourself, go to our website, schedule a one-on-one with me. I'll do it with you. You can share your screen and I'll show you exactly how to do it one on one. It's very simple. You don't have to figure this out on your own. That is exactly why I'm here, is to make sure that you have the access to support. Your back's never against the wall. I'm here to help you. I really hope you enjoyed the stream today. If you know someone that you think would benefit from hearing this information, hit that share button, send it to them, an email, a text, a WhatsApp. Send it to them on social media. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe. Again, if you can, recommend it to your friends. That will mean the world to me. It's your son in tech, Mackenzie, signing off. We will see you on Thursday, where we're going to talk about social media. Until then, we'll see you.